So yesterday we were looking at another aspect of the meaning of Advent as a season with a particular focus of reflection. And I've been saying that as Advent is about waiting for Christmas, waiting for the one who is coming towards us to arrive, but also that we are moving towards him, that Advent itself calls us for a more than usually deep reflection on time. We are in many ways creatures of time. We're contained in time, we're controlled by time. We feel very often pressured by time, or time is hanging on us. Either time goes slowly, for the unemployed or the imprisoned. Time feels very different from the time of people who are working and doing a work that they like, or doing a work they don't like, or being with people that you like, or people being with people you don't like. So time is very subjective, as we've seen, but at the same time it has an objective direction. It's going in a particular direction. Time is running out. Entropy is one of the laws of the universe. So at the same time, time is very mysterious because the universe is expanding, and also if we have a contemplative dimension in our life, a contemplative practice, we're going to become aware at an experiential level of how our meditation is helping us to deal with the different forms of time that we have to live with and move between. So on a time of retreat like this, maybe time slows down a bit. You're in a different kind of rhythm. Whenever we have a serious rhythm in our life, a timetable, a schedule that is healthy and organic, not just the relentless activity of an overbusy schedule or too much work. But if we have a healthy rhythm, and that's part of the secret of modern living, to try to rediscover a healthy rhythm, we discover that we can handle the different kinds of time. So on a retreat like this, we have the rhythm of our meditation, morning, midday, and evening. We have our set times of meals and so on. And I think the effect of this is to give us a quieter understanding of the work that is being done in us and of the real work that matters in our lives. It's when we lose this rhythm and we become caught up in hyperactivity, for example, or stressed out or overwhelmed by all the tasks we have to perform, which is very common today, the burnout syndrome. When that happens, the goodness of our work is affected. Good work is necessary for a happy life, for a healthy mind, and for a healthy body as well. We need to feel that the work we're doing is meaningful, and that it's good work because it brings out the best in us through the attention we give it, but also through the way we can exercise our skills and our talents and develop ourselves and understand what we can do and what we should be doing, and broadening our horizons and self-knowledge. So good work should do all of that, should be creative, in other words. Even if it's routine, it can still be creative if we do it in an attentive and contemplative way. So it can bring out the best in us, make us aware of ourselves in new ways, but it's also good work, it has to be, for this reason, is that it produces benefits for others. It's not just for ourselves, not just for our own power or amusement or reputation or reward, but it's because it actually brings tangible benefits to others. So good work has these two qualities. It brings out the best in us, and it's good for other people as well. And if we feel we're doing good work, we are alive. And it is easier for us, I think, to establish the right kind of rhythm, the right kind of disciplines in our life necessary to maintain that rhythm. Now, here on retreat, it's fairly easy. You don't have to go shopping, you don't have to do emails, although you may be addicted to it, but you don't have to. You're in a space of time for a short time where you can taste more of the essential qualities of your life and where you are in your journey, and reflect upon how this experience will benefit you when you go back to ordinary life. And even in the busyness of ordinary life, where things are not as rhythmic as they are at a time like this here, the twice daily meditation becomes more and more obviously the primary way in which you can reset your life. Because if you are faithful to those two periods of stillness and silence, in the beginning of the day and at the closing of the day in some way, before work, after work, for example, then sunrise and sunset if you're living on a farm, but before work and after work if you're probably living in a city, then you immediately, very quickly, you begin to feel the benefits of this rhythm. And you don't have to force it, you don't have to take extraordinary measures or hire a life coach even. The two meditations themselves will be teaching you. Experience is the teacher, according to the wisdom of the desert fathers and mothers. Experience is the teacher, magistra experientia. So Advent, reflecting on the meaning of Advent as a season in the Church's year, is also an opportunity for us to reflect upon how we relate to time, how we are creatures of time, whether time is crushing us, and or whether time is we're able to use time in order to transcend time. Only through time, time is conquered, remember. So, most of us have fears about certain things. You might be frightened of the dark, you might be frightened of spiders, you might be frightened of bankruptcy, you might be frightened of missing your train, or you might be frightened of all sorts of little things, or big things. But there's also anxiety. Anxiety is vague. It's not specific. You're not quite sure why you're feeling this discontent, this anxiety, this restlessness, this feeling of not being in harmony, not being at peace. And both of these, in a way, anxiety in the vaguer sense, and fear in a more specific, maybe even phobic or obsessive sense, both of these are related to the future. So yesterday we were talking about the past, how we carry the past in us, how it can be locked into our organs of our body, even in traumatized ways, and that the practice of being in the present moment, meditation, a contemplative practice, works on the past. It frees us from the past. It breaks the bonds that hold us into the traumas that we may have passed through, maybe even in a pre-conscious part of our life. So what about the future? Our anxieties or our fears about the future. What would happen if? What will happen when? So we think a lot about the future, organizationally, institutionally. We're always planning, doing plans that usually are out of date by the time they've been written. I was speaking to a head of a large organization recently, and who meditates, and he said, he gets these very expensive reports on the future. Where are we going to be in 5 years' time, and how are we going to do all this? And he says, very expensive to produce, take a long time to produce. And he said he never reads them. He said because they're necessary, because they relieve anxiety. The people set up a group to organize this. They're finally good. We've got got succession planning in place. We've got, financial planning. We know what we. But he says, now he's a successful organizer and leader and manager. But he doesn't. And of course, he recognizes there's a certain kind of planning or anticipation that's necessary. But it's different from feeling that you are going to control the future by trying to predict it, which can lead you into very obsessive and completely unrealistic kinds of approaches to the future. And for him, he said, it's really about seeing where you are at the moment and having a sense of the direction that you are moving in. Or do you need to change the direction, or how do you need to change the speed? Or it's like driving a car. You have to know you're going in a certain direction, and you look to see how much gas you have in the car. But you're driving the car in the present moment. So, and I think that attitude towards the future is a fruit of contemplative consciousness, because the future is a reality. It's not a finished reality, but it is an emerging reality that we have to be conscious of and anticipate. But at the same time, if we live in the future, it's just as harmful as if we're living in the past, trapped in the traumas or the experiences or the pains or whatever, or the nostalgia of the past. And I think if we look at politics today, we can see how this plays out at a collective social level as well as at a personal level. So if we don't get the balance right between the past and the future, by learning how to be in the present, how to heal the past, how to integrate the past, and how to become free from the past, and at the same time learning how to prepare for the future, but not becoming frightened or anxious about it. Every day, I remember the quotation from King James Version, "Take therefore no thought for tomorrow, for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself." Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. So you've got enough problems today without having to worry about problems tomorrow. So the contemplative life to which the gospel calls each one of us, if we understand that Jesus is a teacher of contemplation, when he speaks about prayer, he's speaking about contemplation, then the contemplative life, which is a combination, a balance, a marriage between action and doing and being, action and contemplation, as we heard in the reading from the Isha Upanishad this morning. And deep at the heart of any spiritual vision of life and of the human being in life is the understanding that action and contemplation, or being and doing, are complementary and need to be continually rebalanced. And that is the balance we've lost in our modern culture. And we are paying a very high price for the loss of this fundamental common sense. So, even understanding that this balance is necessary, understanding how we can restore it and how we can maintain it, because it needs to be continuously rebalanced. That's why the 2 periods of meditation balance the day. That's why the second meditation is, for many, I would say for everyone, is a great leap forward on your spiritual journey. And as we heard in Father John's reading at lunchtime yesterday, he was perfectly aware, as he said, that this is demanding. It seems a demanding invitation to meditate twice a day. And he says, he doesn't hesitate to say, this is a minimum. It's an adequate minimum, but it's a minimum. But then he also says, it will take you time to build this into your life. And it will cost. And I think some people, because they're naturally disciplined and naturally very well organized, will just get into this practice like one of the herons landing on the lake there, just smoothly. Most other people, including myself when I started, it can take a long time, and it's a bumpy landing because you're starting and you're stopping and you're starting again and so on. Through all of which you are learning about yourself. The great secret is self-knowledge, and we learn about ourselves in this learning how to meditate as well. So it may take time, and we have to be patient with ourselves, but it's important not to forget that invitation and that natural wisdom of taking these 2 times at the beginning and the end of the day. We all go to bed at night, we all get up in the morning. There's probably a great variety in how you go to bed and when you go to bed and how you get up or when you get up. But nevertheless, the world goes to sleep at some point and wakes up at some point. So that is just a rhythm of life that we cannot escape. After 3 or 4 days, without being in that rhythm, you die even. The body, not only the mind, but the body itself can't cope. Just as we are not coping with the arrhythmic nature of modern culture. So, I think, it's not about making people feel guilty if you're not doing the second meditation. That's why the Pope is never going to say everybody should meditate twice a day under pain of mortal sin. And if you don't do the second meditation, you have to go to confession, just like you used to go to confession for not going to Mass. So that's not going to happen. Which means we are moving into a new era of spirituality and of Christian practice, Christian prayer, because the emphasis now is upon self-discipline, not upon external religious discipline that was enforced, of course, by social pressure and religious guilt. Social pressure of being excluded, expelled, excommunicated, or disapproved of, or so on. So today, we have to grow up spiritually and take responsibility for this spiritual rhythm of our lives. And that's the message of the great prophets of our time, of the 20th century especially. This is why Dietrich Bonhoeffer spoke about a Christianity, a church that has come of age. After the disasters of Christianity in Europe during the Second World War, the complete failure, virtual failure to respond from any kind of place of Christian courage to the evils that were happening, the church collapsed interiorly in the same way that the Dutch Reformed Church that was supporting apartheid for decades in South Africa, after the end of apartheid, it had no reason to exist. It just collapsed. I was there recently. And the amazing thing is, it's being reborn as a contemplative church. With a lot of young Dutch Reform. They're still Dutch Reform. They're very Dutch Reform. But they are moving and experimenting and inquiring and practicing contemplative Christianity as never before. So the same thing is happening in the Western world. And if you come from a part of the world where the church is still strong and has authority and so on, well, be prepared, because I don't think it's going to last. And when we see in Rio, I think for the first time there's a minority of people who identify as Catholic, for example. So anyway, Simone Weil similarly speaks of the need for a new sanctity, a new kind of holiness, appropriate to the conditions of the modern world. Now these, Bonhoeffer or Simone Weil or Thomas Merton, John Main, these were deeply committed contemplatives who were also deeply conscious of their contemporary, of the contemporary crisis. And that's what prophets mean, what prophets do. So, this is why we can hear the call of the gospel today into a contemplative rhythm of life more clearly because of the conditions we're in. But we often flip between contentment when things are going well in our lives today, this morning, and we can be flipped to the other side of anxiety or fear or panic when things change. We all know that. We know how quickly our mind, our feelings can be changed by an email or a telephone call or somebody not responding to you as you would like. This is described, I haven't got it here, but I'll maybe read it later, in the first paragraph of the letter of James, where he says, "Be grateful when all kinds of trials and tribulations and difficulties come to you." Be grateful. So yeah, did you have a, what's that?
Reinforce your faith.
To reinforce your faith and show you your priorities and form your character. You know, as a sailor once said to me, you don't become a good sailor on calm seas. So the next time, you know, somebody says to you, "How are you feeling?" and you say, "Terrible, everything's going wrong," thank God. You know, I'm very grateful for it. Simone Weil puts it this way. She says, the events of life are like messengers that God sends. And she said it's like somebody waiting for a message from their beloved, and waiting for the messenger to come with a letter. And when the letter comes, what they're happy about is that there's a letter, there's communication. It doesn't matter what the messenger looks like or what they happen to be like. So it doesn't matter in a sense whether, in one sense, it doesn't matter whether the event is painful or joyful, whether it is a moment of loss or anxiety about loss, or whether it is the celebration of the gift. No. I don't think we ever lose the distinction between those two. And clearly, you don't go around looking to be miserable. But the point is that if we have the balance and the rhythm established on good foundations, then we don't become miserable when the messenger is unattractive, and we don't become unrealistic when the messenger brings a nice package. So this is the idea of detachment, or it's actually the law of contentment as well. It's a common practice in some schools of Buddhism, but it's present in all religious, in all spiritual wisdom traditions, really. Reminding us that contentment does not mean the fulfillment of what we want, getting what you want, but it's understanding and accepting what things are now and how things are now. So it's an insight into the nature of what is happening and how you are feeling in relation to it, and even if that is painful or disturbing, and accepting it for now. That's the basis of contentment. And if we go for the consumer idea of contentment, which is just to fulfill what you want, then you're flying on one engine and you're going round and round in circles on the cycle of desire. Brother David Steindl-Rast, a Benedictine monk, has 93 now, but in his great insight, really, that he develops in many different forms, is about gratitude or thankfulness and living in gratitude. He has a great TED talk on it. And his basic idea is very simple, and that is gratitude doesn't mean only being thankful for the good things or the good times. So we're not grateful because we're happy, but we're happy because we're grateful. Happy because we're grateful. And this helps us to identify the value of the true treasure of life. Where your heart is, there your treasure will be. So I'd like to, some of you may have seen it before, but some of you haven't, I think. Might just give a little map of the stages of the journey that we are on, and the journey of meditation and the way it leads us through different levels of consciousness. So there are two ways many ways we can look at it. This is only a little map on the back of an envelope, obviously, but if you're asking for directions between here and Poitiers, there are 3 or 4 different routes you could take, but it's useful to know the options. So one way of looking at it is the way the desert wisdom, the Christian desert, described it. The cycle, as it were, of the spiritual journey. So this is summarizing it, but they would begin with the experience of enthusiasm. So you begin the spiritual journey because you feel called, because you feel attracted, just as the way at the beginning of a romantic relationship, there is this power of attraction, and it seems as if it's everything is going to go easily. So you start to meditate, and you say, twice a day, why not? I'll do twice a day. Actually, maybe I could do it 4 times a day. I could just get up earlier in the morning, and I won't watch TV, I won't watch the news, and so the enthusiasm. But after a while, of course, you do run into problems. And the problem of resistance. You still have the attraction, but you also have a corresponding resistance. So you slow down. And it's sometimes as if you're driving with the brake on. So you come to a retreat, and that helps you take the brake off. And you get support from, the website, from your meditation group, from daily wisdom, from books that you read, or from an online meditation group. So if you want to continue and not slow down too much, we need help. That's the basic and universal truth of the spiritual journey, is if you think you can do it on your own, you're going to be in for a big disappointment or go crazy. So the enthusiasm begins to meet a resistance. The ego doesn't like to let go, and the ego wants to take over. So then what seems very simple at first in meditation starts to become very complicated. And the ego then comes in, and you see this, well, I think I'll do it my way. I'll change this. I'll do a mixture of things. And so we start to complicate things. And as is very clear from John Main's teaching, and I'm not saying this is the only way, but this is the way we're doing it, that the radical simplicity is the path that he describes. And it's the radical simplicity that we need help to keep up, because it's very easy for the ego to creep in, and the ego will creep in by wanting to take over, take back control. That's what's happened in Brexit. Take back control. That was the motto of the Brexit Party. And it became very complicated, didn't it? So, not to bring politics into it, so anyway, so the next step, the next phase of this cycle is what they called Apatheia. And Apatheia is what everybody feels in any commitment you make to anything. It's the feeling of resistance, of disappointment, or I'm not making any progress. It can be intense, or it could be light. In community life, it was summarized by Ramana Maharshi, who was a very enlightened being in the last century in India. And he said, with a sort of amusement, he said, people come to the ashram looking for enlightenment. And they're prepared to give everything. They just want to purify themselves, leave themselves behind, and be enlightened. But after 2 weeks, they become caught up in ashram politics. So it happens with everything. So Apatheia enters into relationships as well. As we realize that the people or the person we're in relationship with is a real person who is different from you and is not just has not only been created in order to fulfill your fantasies, unfortunately. So you have to relate to the other people in your life as real others. And that brings about, tensions and opportunities for growth, obviously, in going deeper. But so Apatheia, as I say, can be intense, or it can be lighter. It can be a dark night as well, real dark night, as John of the Cross describes it. But Apatheia covers a whole range of states of mind and experiences that challenge our enthusiasm. But then, in their wisdom, they said, if you go through Apatheia, how do you go through Apatheia? You go through Apatheia with faith, perseverance. You have to go through it. Nobody's going to do it for you. On the other hand, you can't do it alone. So in the desert tradition, so the monks, less experienced monks who were suffering from Apatheia, especially in the middle of the afternoon, they found, would seek out an elder, Abba or Amma, and they would say, I'm really going through a very bad time. I feel this. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm fantasizing all the time. I feel very restless, or whatever. I have all these different temptations, and so they have to speak. They have to be open. You can't really get through Apatheia without some form of confession, of being open. Bottling things up and just trying to handle them by yourself doesn't do it, really. So some kind of, some form of openness and trust. And then in the classic Desert Father stories, the elder says, okay, listens, gives encouragement, and then says, now go back to your cell, and your cell will teach you everything. And if the encounter has been good, you will then be eager to go back to your cell. because you want to pick up the work again, because you love the work. So you've been humbled, but you've also been renewed. And you know you're not perfect, and you know you have your bad moments, but that has met with acceptance and wisdom, not with a sense of failure. So then, when you come through Apatheia, you come through to what they called Apatheia. And Apatheia is not apathy, but it means being without passions. And passions for them, it didn't mean what we think of as passion really, but it meant passion for them was being overwhelmed by negative states of mind. Could be greed, vanity, pride, lust, anger. So these were the passions that pollute our consciousness and make us obsessive or make us unbalanced. So, but Apatheia is that calm equanimity, calmness of mind, and which of course also reflects a harmony with the body, with our physical reality. So Apatheia is the health of the soul, is how they described it. Health, full wholeness and health. And the child of Apatheia, anybody remember? Agape, yeah. I started writing it. So the child of Apatheia is agape, which is boundless love. This is love that isn't just your personal love, but it's God's love pouring through and taking over everything and filling everything and bathing everything. And so here's a way of seeing a cycle of the journey. And it is a cycle. Now, but each time we go through the cycle, we understand it a little better. So when you're in Apatheia, you know that you're in that phase, and it's easier to go through it, and you know how to deal with it better. You know who to go to speak to, or what you should do. I should go for a retreat sometime, or I should do something. And when you come into Apatheia, you know you have made progress. There is progress, because you don't go backwards. But even if there's a sense then that you're back with enthusiasm, but then the Apatheia starts again, you don't despair, because it's as if you're going through a spiral movement. It's not a linear journey like that. It's more like a spiral. So in some ways you cover the same ground, you go through the same experiences. Oh, here I am, been meditating for 20 years, and now I'm feeling very dry and discouraged. You say, well, something good will come out of this. You didn't say that the first time. The first time you thought, oh my God, I have to take up crosswords or something. Some alternative to meditation. But after you've been through this and gained a few flying miles, you recognize the pattern. You can share it with others, of course. What time do we start? 1:45? What time? Do we start at 10:30? Oh, that's long enough then. Okay. Well, the other thing I was going to do was the levels of consciousness, but we'll do that maybe this afternoon and have time to discuss it.